Okay, now I want to move on to the final area of the triangle, which in some respects is the most slippery, as I said, and that is scope. Okay. So I'm going to just show you the list of features, and many of these we've already looked at, but the view that I think is most relevant when we're talking about scope of work is the task usage and resource usage, well, the two views. Super powerful views, not used nearly as much as I would expect, even by some fairly experienced project users. Oddly, not so much on the report side. This is a sort of a gap. At least I couldn't find really relevant reports that really just focused on scope of work. Now, we've talked about some of these other issues, so we'll go back to the project information statistics dialog box, why you would say the baseline, all relevant here. Now, for those of you who are familiar with the scheduling formula, you know that work is a derived value, and it is derived when I assign a work resource to a task. So I have duration, assignment units, and work, right? So when we talk about work as correlating to scope of work, we just literally are focusing on the work value associated with work resources. Now those values show up in lots of different places. They're baselined in the same way. If there are pay rates associated with the resources, those cost calculations are done in a similar fashion. But for my money, the usage views are really the best way to work with this. So I'm going to go first to the task usage view. Now, if you've never used a usage view before, you'll notice it's a little different than the Gantt chart view. I do have a table on the left, and I have a sort of a timeline on the right, but this is also tabular. It's not a graphical representation. And what this is showing me is, we have this funny phrase, we call it the time phase representation of various details. And this is the weird place in the UI, they call these details. They're attributes either at the task level, the resource level, or the assignment level. And this is the only place in project, really, that you see these. And I'm going to widen this field because it's annoyingly narrow. And here's that term work. And when you see the term work by itself in project, you have to think of it as scheduled work or historical work. Planned work? It's planned, yeah, we'll say planned work. Yeah, planned work would be the best way to put it. The actual work is historical. I misspoke. Actual work would be historical. So I think it'd be better if work were labeled planned work, but it doesn't. It's just work. So in this case, and I'm going to go ahead and show the project summary task, which again is on the Format tab. And this is also a useful place where I can see roll-up values on both sides of the diagram, the table on the left and then the time phase grid on the right. Also really useful here to adjust the time scale. That's back on the View tab. And usually with usage views, you're usually looking at very fine detail or very broad, but generally not in between. So I might even pop out to a monthly view here. And so in this task usage view, you can see the details I have applied right now. And these are rolling up, of course, from individual assignments to the task, to summary task, to the project summary task. So I can scale whatever level of focus I want. In cases where I have multiple resource assignments to a task, again, those are broken out individually. Super useful level of detail. This is also a great UI for actually recording actuals at the assignment level. And then you'll see the impact of the scheduling engine if you have 8 hours scheduled and you record 6 hours actual, those 2 hours don't just disappear, they're carried forward. Yeah, so the actual work is the label for historical work. This work has been done. I'm going to record, maybe I'll record that the task is now complete. That's a simple level of tracking. Maybe I'll record the task is 50% complete. I wouldn't do that in this kind of view. I just do that in the Gantt chart view. The most granular level of tracking I can do is at the assignment level. So typically, yeah, all the data is coming from the same source information. I'm just representing it in different forms across these different views. yeah, you may notice when I look at work and actual work, they're oddly consistent. Oddly consistent. And yeah, project does that. So as I record actual work, project basically says, you've recorded actual work for this time period or on this task. I assume that's really what you meant, and therefore I'm going to set the as scheduled work to equal actual, because as scheduled, that doesn't apply to the past. That only applies to the future. So what I wish project would do would introduce the labels like historical actuals and as scheduled actuals or something like that to kind of distinguish. Yes, sir? Well, that's exactly what I would like to do, and happily there's a way to do that right here in the usage view. So remember I said this label details is really weird. This is one of the very few places you see it in project. And there are a couple of ways I can add other details to this view. I believe the weird place, yeah, is on the Format tab. So you have to think of this as, I'm changing the formatting of this view. I think it's sort of a weird way. I think of formatting as I'm bolding text or italicizing, but these are some of the other details. And we'll start off, we'll just drop all the details in. And then there's a dialog box here. I can get into some pretty arcane details here. And what that's doing is it's going to take whatever value I'm interested in, it's going to represent it on a time-phased grid. This is the only place in project that you see this type of time-phased grid. That's why it's such a powerful view. Now, usually I'm just focused on, work or cost. I wouldn't necessarily show all of these at one time. Here's cumulative work, which is exactly what it sounds like. Here's that baseline work, cost, actual cost. The more typical way I deal with these is I just right-click, and then I pick the kinds of values I'm most interested in. And again, I'm always seeing that at the assignment level, the task level, summary task level, and project summary task level. Now, this kind of representation is really focused on work, right? I can also see cost values with that, and I'm always seeing it represented over the timeline, the timescale grid here. There's a similar view, and it just basically pivots around this. So instead of looking at assignments per task, maybe I'd like to look at assignments per resource. And that, of course, is the resource usage view, which is right there. Same kind of mechanism here. Let me scroll to see some data. So there's my time scale. I may want to adjust the time scale out, days, weeks, months, whatever I'm interested in. There's the details, and I can drop in some, actually, to me, some more interesting values here. As I said, the usage view is a really good area if you're entering assignment level actuals. This is a really good input screen to do that, because it's basically set up kind of like a timesheet. So I'm going to drop in actual work, for example, and if I were reporting probably, say, on a weekly level, I get a timesheet from Haney Marcos, or I sit down with Haney Marcos and I say, hey, during the month of April, you had these assignments, and a bunch of them are actually a recurring task. Let's get down to some more interesting ones. Yeah, here we go. We'll go look at these. And here we've seen actual work has already been recorded. That might have been done at the assignment level or at the task level. We don't know, looking at this view. And as we said, the historical work is adjusted to match actual work. Project assumes, if I said 14 hours of work on this assignment the week of April 19th, I meant it, and therefore it doesn't really matter what the previous scheduled value was. It matters in baseline, it's been saved in baseline, but the work that's represented is now historical matches the actual. Any delta between those two is accounted for in scheduled work in the future, either adding or decreasing it. And that's, of course, the scheduling engine doing what it does. So this is the best view I have found to really focus in on that scope of work question. Now, Absent, of course, from everything we've talked about in project is the whole discussion about, well, scope of deliverable, right? Remember we said scope has the two sides of that coin: scope of work, scope of deliverable. And this is where project just says, hey, you're the project manager, I'm just the modeling tool. So you, the user, you, the project manager, have to be able to understand how altering the scope of work will impact scope of deliverable, either positively or negatively. And likewise, altering time or cost will impact scope of work, which will impact scope of deliverable. And then that's the discussion that you have as a project manager. And most of that discussion, project doesn't know anything about, can't really help you with, other than to give you the quantifiable data to inform that discussion. And the same could be said for that quality discussion that we said, is sometimes said to be missing from the project triangle model. There's no quality, menu that I can go play with, but I as the project manager have to understand the impact I'm going to have on the quality. Okay, so we only had one project crash. That's pretty good for a user group demo, and that brings me to final steps here. I hope that you have found this useful in the sense of, this is a mental model, it's a set of talking points, if you will, and in particular when you're trying to explain project management issues that are evident in your project plan to an audience that may not have that depth of background. And everybody, I think, can conceptually connect time, cost, and scope, even with just a little bit of coaching from a project manager. So I'm going to wrap it up there, and I think we're overdue for our raffle. Okay, thank you.